Back to the ballot box in Mali, and some optimism as voters choose a new president. And that new leader will have to work with many groups to bring stability. Can these elections make a difference after months of unrest? And what role for the army? This is Inside Story. Hello and a very warm welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. People in Mali are waiting for the outcome of a runoff vote to elect their new president. There's a lot at stake. The election is a major step towards re-establishing democracy and stability in the West African country. It's also the first to be held since Tuareg separatists led a rebellion against the government in northern Mali in January last year. That was followed by a group of soldiers staging a coup of the government's handling of the rebellion. The power vacuum allowed armed groups, some linked to Al-Qaeda, to take vast swathes of territory in the north. And by May, rebel groups had merged and declared northern Mali an Islamic state. Earlier this year, France sent in troops to drive them back. And last month, UN peacekeepers began replacing French forces. For more on Mali and its future, I'm joined by our three guests. From the Malian capital, Bamako, Kumba Ba Traore, founder of SOS Democratia, Malian non-profit organisation focusing on civil society activism. From Manchester, Akli Shika, a spokesman for the Tuareg youth movement for justice and equality. And joining us on Skype from Orthez in France, that's Martin Vogel, freelance journalist who has covered Mali extensively. Welcome to all of you. Kumba Ba Traore, give us a sense of how this is playing out in the capital. Talk us through the second round of voting and how you believe it went.
Yes, everything is fine. We are very thankful to God for having a peaceful second round election. It was actually, in terms of technical difficulties, it was even a better one because we didn't see the cluster of the people waiting, searching for the voting bureaus. Everything was clear on that front. It was quite organized inside, and also the procedures were quite well defined. We even had pancards at the door explaining the voting processes because from the first round we saw that there were about 400,000 annulled, but we don't know quite the quote part, which share of the 400,000 that was annulled, which one was due to the wrong voting. But this time around there were explanations about the voting process and everything went well.
So it certainly seems practice makes perfect. Tell us how people viewed this. I mean, were they frightened, or was there a sense of enthusiasm at a second stab at this?
There were enthusiasm, but there were not as many people in terms of the historic participation we have seen on July 28th. The number of people who came out yesterday was a little bit lower. I don't know quite the percentage, but my guess is going to be at least 10% down. We had about a 51% participation at the national level for the 28th of July, but I think I've seen also some number of what was saying 49. But give and take, it was way above 40%. Historically, Mali had never been able to surpass the 36–38% in terms of participation. So my guess is yesterday we probably will reach above 40, but it's not going to surpass 50%.
Okay, pretty
so
significant.
Participation was less, and a lot of people were saying.
Okay, Akli, do you view this with the same amount of enthusiasm? Do you think this went well as far as the Tuaregs are concerned?
Well, for the Malians, yes, but for the Azawad people, I don't think there is any enthusiasm, or they are not taking any kind of participation in what's going in Bamako or somewhere else. As we all know, the MNLA has agreed, and of course by the international pressure and particularly French intervention, to elect someone who can, a legitimate president who might be in place and to be negotiated with. As we all know, there is no government in Bamako since 2012, since that the coup which has been taken in 2012. But no, for the Azawad people, of course, as we all know, they have refused and abstained to go to vote, and they see all these elections actually as a joke.
Let me just bring some things up here. You mentioned MLNLA, that's the group who are ruling the north effectively. And you talk about Azawad, that's also the region in the north. Many there, including you, want it to be declared independent. You say that you haven't had anybody to talk to, but the fact that there is an opportunity now to talk to somebody as soon as the next president is elected, I mean, do you feel that there is now a possible future for you?
Well, let's just hope, but according the Azawad people have been fighting for freedom and their simple rights since 1963, but actually I don't think there is any, there would not be there any big difference between who's going to become the next president or the previous ones. The experience, what the Azawad people actually have seen for almost 50 years now, they all disappointed and have lost and hope of any kind of the Malian government. As I'm talking here, before just I entered the studio, the Malian actually still continuing the massacres and killings and also destroying the properties of the Tuareg people and the Arabs in Gao and Timbuktu. And always since this agreement has been signed, almost 250 violations by the Malian army. So nothing actually, as the Tuareg people particularly, who have been fighting for their freedom, and the Azawad state in the north, they don't believe any government is going to be different from the previous ones.
Okay,
but
so
just,
two
as I said earlier, the pressure
excuse me,
actually
jumping
put
in, two radically opposing views from our two guests there, Akli and Kumba. Martin, you've covered Mali for many years. You were there when the coup took place and were witness to much of the fighting. What do you make of the second round of elections and elections in the first place?
Oh, I think Mali had gone through a period without any coherent government since the coup d'etat, which took place in early 2012. So there's no doubt that this was an incredibly important moment just to get some sort of political structure back into the country. Mali had been a moderately successful democracy for 20 years before that. So this was really important to get some sort of legitimate president back into place.
I mean, do you think there's any chance that these elections can restore what the coup and the fighting wiped out so quickly, democracy and losing the north?
I think there's some chance that things in the south will get back to some normality quickly. I think the problems in the north are very, very complicated and go beyond the Tuareg issue as well. We need to remember that the Tuareg aren't the only ethnic population in the north, and even within the Tuareg population, there are factions as well. So it's an incredibly complicated situation in the north of Mali.
It is indeed. Akli, let's talk a little bit about the amount of people who weren't able to vote. Many of those had fled the fighting in the north. What happens to them? How will they vent their frustration at this?
Just before I answer that question, I just want to correct something that has been going all the time in the media and the people who are concerned in Mali. Mali has never been a democracy. As we all know, Mali, since the independence, all the president who come to power actually come by coups. The last one, each time the Tuareg grows in the north, the coup happens in the south, and it has been going like that since 1963. Regarding to your question, of course, as we all know, the Tuareg and the people in the north, almost all of them, 90% of them has been displaced and take refuge in Mauritania or Burkina Faso or in Algeria. And those people actually faced massacres and killings, and that's why they refused to vote for the Mali, to vote for the killers who are still blood in their hands. So that's why the people, we have almost 700,000 refugees in Burkina Faso. Only 100 managed and went to vote. And the same we have in refugee camps in Mauritania, almost 250. Only 400 went to vote. So this is actually, and also we have demonstrations and protests going all the time during these elections in Bamako, in Kidal, and in Tenzawatan, and elsewhere, refusing the presence of Mali or So it's as I said earlier, it's just a joke. Everybody says this as just a political game, and it's been have been forced by international community, by France itself, who actually took the Azawad lands in 1963 and gave it to Mali, and now in 2012 it is coming back again to give it back to Mali.
Okay,
and
we'll talk about the French a little bit more a little later on. I'd like to very quickly take a moment just to remind you who the two men are, the men hoping to be president. First, the front runner, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. He was Mali's prime minister between 1994 and 2004. He's made two unsuccessful bids for the presidency before, in 2002 and 2007. And he has the support of 15 smaller parties who agreed to back him last year. Boubacar's rival for the top job is Soumaïla Cissé, a former finance minister. He also ran in the 2002 election, but lost in the second round to the deposed President Touareg. Cissé had to flee from his home after the coup when he was attacked by soldiers loyal to the coup leader, Captain Amadou Sanogo. Cissé has called for the army to stay out of politics. Kumba, I mean, that's key here, isn't it? Is there any chance that the army will stay out of politics?
The army has no choice but stay out of politics. But like my brother from the Azawad, so-called Azawad region was saying, I thought we were here to talk about the Malian election. But we also have freedom of speech, so he can say whatever he said. And that is right, but we all know the reality. We have moved a step forward, and we are going to reconciliation to have our country as one united people. And that's what we're working on. An agreement has been signed by the Azawad, so-called Azawad people themselves. And I don't think that we want to come back on those agreements. Malian wants to go and join the club of a developing nation. And our army needs to be Republican.
Why should those in Azawad believe that things will change for them? Promises were made decades ago, and if anything, they were totally excluded out of the process.
What we need to know, first of all, things are not worse in the so-called Azawad region more than in other regions of Mali, and that's the truth. And with regard to the election, people were ready to vote, at least the people who came back to the region, or the people who were brave enough to stay. We still know that most of the people are displaced, and most of the people are refugees in neighboring countries. And the few that were brave enough to come and go out on the 28th, they have been intimidated by the so-called revolutionary, out of law folks that are still there wandering around. But the majority of so-called Azawad region and other region of Mali, we just want to move a step forward because we need a peaceful nation to build our nation and join the economic emancipation. We don't have any conflicts. We know the conflicts are just a waste of time for us. We are poor. We need water. We need food. We need schooling. We need credibility of our leaders. We need democracy. That's the true conflict that we are facing. Everything else is really a distraction. Azawad and so-called Azawad allied have already signed 18th of June the agreement to move a step forward so we can really develop our country. So I don't know why we having these distraction talks, because to me it's unnecessary.
Let me just bring Martin in here, if you don't mind. Kumba, if you don't mind. Martin, do you agree with that actually those in the north, from what you've seen in your travels and your reporting, that their situation is no different to others in Mali, that they face the same problems?
There's no doubt that Mali, all over Mali, is an incredibly poor country. I mean, by all the international indexes, Mali falls well within the bottom 10, if not the bottom 5. there are specific problems within the north, and there's absolutely no doubt about that as well. Mainly brought on by the environment. The north of Mali is in the Sahara Desert, so problems of isolation, getting infrastructure in has been incredibly difficult over the years. The Tuareg nationalist groups would say this has been because of bad will from the government in Bamako. Governments in Bamako would say no, they were doing the best that they can. It's been a problem of logistics.
Let's talk a little bit more about the peace process that both of you have pulled out. And actually, I mean, what is this stance there as far as this peace process is concerned? Because there are so many different groups who represent so many different ideals. How is it possible to be all-inclusive?
We don't need to mix matters, actually, or the issues. We only have the only movement that's represented the Tuareg people is the MNLA. And we have some substitution or other movements, which the Azawad High Council and also the Arab movement, which just have agreed a few days up back in Mauritania, now united, and they put all their problems aside and now united to face
and you think that's a fair representative of all the tribes, because not everybody signed this agreement to discuss peace?
Well, yes, majority of the people, we know all that the people are vote and they, you know, we have all these people, especially particularly if you went to the refugees camps where these people actually fled the hostilities and discrimination of the Malian army. They are all raising the Azawad flag. They are all believing in MNLA and the movement of the Arab front. They have agreed on the unity and the fighting for the liberation of the Azawad and protecting their people. And as I said, this has been going for 50 years now, and the lady who's talking from Bamako actually is actually representing the view of the Malians, the stubbornness of the Malian people. This is 53 years now, and the problem is still going. The only solution of this to make this for once and for all is separate, is to get these people their land back. Azawad has never been a part of Mali, never been, and I don't think it's going to be. All methods and attempts have been failed. Now
okay,
we have to give up. These people now have declared
more,
and the Azawad
excuse me,
became now
about those challenges
state
that you are raising, and excuse me cutting you off there, but I still want to get through quite a bit in the show. I mean, after a tumultuous couple of years in Mali, the new president will have a lot to deal with, as you can gather from our guests. Top of the list, restoring calm in a country that once had a reputation for political stability. That includes reunifying Mali. Rebels are still thought to be in control of some two-thirds of the country, mainly in the north. Last year's Tuareg uprising was fueled by what was perceived to be unequal treatment of northerners by the government. The new president will have to address those grievances, as well as a poorly performing economy and widespread poverty that contributed to the unrest. Martin, a lot of money is on these elections, and that's possibly why these elections were called so quickly. Who's going to oversee that money? Will France be called in to assist, possibly?
I think as all sort of international money, it'll be international organisations, the UN and Western donors who will probably oversee it. If I can just say one thing very quickly, I think that the MNLA's constant assertion that they represent the entire population of the north of Mali is just wrong, and they should really stop doing that, because it's made them subject to ridicule throughout all observers who have watched
and even more
crisis.
Frightening. I mean, that area is still awash with weapons, isn't it?
Yeah. So this money will come in, and one of the main reasons, I think, as you said, France pushed very, very heavily for these elections to happen, was that so aid money could flow again. The United States has very strict provisions after a coup d'etat that they can't give money to a non-democratic, what they view as a non-democratic state. So the Western powers were behind what, I mean, many have called a rather flawed election, even though it went quite well. There were real problems with the electoral rolls, and one of the reasons was that so they could be seen to be giving money to a legitimate government again.
But that's not the only reason France was pushing for a quick resolution to this. I mean, they have interests there. There's payback.
Oh, definitely. I mean, not only is France takes seriously the terrorist threat that was coming from the north of Mali. There had been kidnappings. These people were talking about attacking France, if not France, French installations across the Sahara region. But you just have to look across the border to Niger, massive uranium mines, French interests, massive economic interests, billions and billions of dollars. And France needs to make sure that those installations, that investment is protected.
Ackley, what is the view of French troops? I believe some French troops will remain. Will that go down well in your part of the country?
Well, that's absolutely would be bad news for the Malian army, who, of course, can't find his way out of paper books. I don't think and that's what the Malians actually have to understand and take in serious matters, because the French or whoever is coming, the foreign powers or troops who come to north of Mali are not going to stay there forever. As the gentleman who's speaking, French only interested actually in protecting its companies in uranium, which produces almost 80% of the power of French in France. So that's absolutely bad news, and I don't think this is the end of the problem. That the problem has to be addressed. The people who have a problem has to be addressed.
Kumba, Ackley says there that the Malian army can't fight its way out of a paper bag, but we did see a coup, so it's an army not to be underestimated. What do you think it'll take for the army to step in? I mean, where does the country have to be in this next stage?
The army is part of the country and other institution. And the Malian people in general, we just want to move ahead with the assistance of all the United Nations and our allies. As you know, we have already had training sessions undergoing in Mali. The first part has been gone and is on the ground now in the northern region of Mali, and the second battalion is being formed. So we all know, and there has not been any shadow around that, the army needs to be retrained, needs to be reformed, needs to be reorganized like the Malian society itself. The army folks didn't come from the sky. They came from the society. And we know that our society has a lot of illnesses we need to be cured of. And I'm glad you talked about the money issue also before you passed me the speech. When we talk about money, and my brother, he tells me I'm a lady, but to me, all these people from the so-called Azawad regions are my brother. And before, it takes the country back to 53 years. But let's take back for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years even. The so-called Azawad region has always been very part of Malian, and we are linked. And today you do the census, the majority of the so-called three Azawad regions are southern descent.
Okay.
They are not Tuareg.
Let me bring in Martin for the final word, if you don't mind.
And in terms of,
Martin, with all those issues that have been raised by both my guests, who do you think is in the better position to lead the country into some sort of stable future?
I think my personal view is Mali is actually quite lucky. I mean, Malian democracy is far from perfect, but both these gentlemen who have presented for the presidential election are competent, confident politicians who can inspire some confidence in the Malian people. And then we just have to see exactly how they do once they get into the presidential palace and take on the big job.
Okay, Ackley, who would you like to see leading this process? You say that you're not prepared to talk to them anyway, it's probably not going to make any difference, but who would you like to see in the seat of power?
None of them, actually. As I said, I'm not from that part of the Sahara, but I'm representing the view and the perspective of the Tuareg people or the people of North. None of them actually is going to make any difference, because, as we said, this has been going for 53 years. So it's not going to just solve by whoever who been yesterday with the Toumani Touré and jump today in a very critical time to say solve the problem. Particularly the guy who is winning who's likely actually to win the election is Ibrahim. He's very aggressive towards, because one of his political, what he was saying, the promises that promising is to demolish and destroy the Tuareg in the north. He's going to, you know, wipe out the country from the people, the white people.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to end the program there on that speculation. I believe we're going to be getting the results on Friday. Thank you very much to my guests, Kumba Traore, Akli Shika and Martin Vogel. And thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you want, of course, you can send us your feedback. Just email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Jane Dutton. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.